Speed.
Okay, so there's no particular name for this program. It's just a program inspired by Carter G. Woodson. I was at a bookstore the other day, and I opened up Miseducation of the Negro. He basically said he wrote the book because there was a need for it, and he said there was no particular fashion or structure of the book. He said that, well, I had a whole bunch of notes, so I put together a book and I called it Miseducation of the Negro because that was the subject. So I guess you could say that the subject of this particular show is as as you'll find out. So today on this episode, the first episode, I think it's appropriate that we talk about media and what it is and what it does. Now, if you're squeamish or if you are sensitive, I wouldn't recommend watching this because you're going to be very, very upset. So, I'm an advocate of reading and writing. And if you're going to watch movies, I say that you should get the maximum amount from the movies. So, all of these things are media and they convey an idea. So if you go into like right now, so this is media. So right now you're watching me, you're listening to me speak. So everything that I'm saying, you're fixated on it, right? And you're gonna leave this experience with some sort of idea or set of ideas. So think about when you go to a movie or you go to a play and you leave. Once you leave, you want to be the Lion King. You want to be, like my man said, he has on the Simpson shirt. So, you might want to act like Bart Simpson or something like that with a slingshot. Um, so you have to pay attention to these things. Now, I'm 29. I've been watching TV since I can remember. Like, I remember watching cartoons, watching football, watching all this stuff. And at one point, I wanted to be a football player. Didn't really work out because you got to do a whole bunch of stuff to play football. So it's very easy to say, I want to be a football player. I want to be Spider-Man because that's what it's designed to do. Now, if you have some sort of culture in place that has you kind of know what you're going to be before you reach a certain age, then that's ideal. So if you need doctors, if you need lawyers, if you need whatever, that's what you're going to produce. Media, however, produces pretty much anything. So if you have people that are influenced by this media, say Spider-Man movies, what is a Spider-Man movie going to produce? Not Spider-Man. It's just going to captivate you for a while and you're going to have to go back to your job. You're going to fantasize for a little bit and have to go back to reality. If you watch something about a SWAT team, now you can go and be a SWAT member, but the reality of SWAT teams is someone's gonna die, like it's you or somebody else. So that's probably not ideal. That's what happens. So media is very powerful in this way that if you if you're not careful, it'll like run your whole life. Now, I know that's a long introduction to something like this, but I really want to drive home the idea that if you're not careful with what you take in, because you know how they say, what you eat is what you shit. That's basically all black folks do. So if you haven't guessed by now, this show is also geared specifically to black people because we have the biggest problem when it comes to media. I don't know how other folks do when it comes to media, but I'm black, so that's what I'm focused on. So I've noticed that in New York City alone, that there are very few black-owned bookstores. There's one uptown in Harlem. I think it's called Sisters Uptown. Excellent place. I guarantee you pay a visit. And at Sisters Uptown, every time you go in there, they talk to you about what's going on in the community and then what's going on, say, out of state somewhere or maybe out of the country. And it's the same conversation. No bookstores. or there's very few bookstores, or this bookstore is going out of business. And if they talk about TV shows, they talk about TV shows that, I mean, they don't really do anything but produce, some type of laughter. And it's like, laughter is important, keeps you in a good mood or whatever. But what's funny about, how can I put this? What's funny about your destruction? What are you talking about, Osman DCs? My name's Osman DCs, by the way, if you were wondering. This is a very unorthodox show, so get used to that, because we have too many shows that are structured in a certain way. So think of this as an African Twilight Zone type thing, but not as weird. So you go into this bookstore, you get all of this conversation, and it gets you thinking. Once you leave this place, now the gears in your mind are gone. So when I decided to start reading, I said, what have I been doing this whole time, and what have I gotten from it? So I thought about all the movies I'd watched. I thought about my favorite movie, No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men is a movie about an old man who was a sheriff. His daddy was a sheriff. His daddy's daddy was a sheriff. Crime has changed exponentially since his grandfather's time. And now it just seems like you can't do anything to stop it. Like, there's no way to stop it. So there's a character named Anton Chigurh. He's like the antagonist, but the movie and the book, see, if you read the book, you get more imagery, but the movie is pretty straightforward. He's a bad guy, kills people. So one scene in the movie that really resonates with me is, well, there's two scenes: coin toss scene, and there's three scenes: coin toss, the hotel scene where he's sitting in a chair across from Woody Harrelson, and the very end of the movie where he's with the wife. Sorry if I spoiled it. Spoiler. So, spoilers. He asks the gas station proprietor, he says, do you know what date is on this coin? And he tells him the date. And then he tells him that this coin has been traveling X amount of years until it reaches you. See, why I'm explaining this is to say, this movie is putting it in your mind how life works, how reality works. Things happen by chance. See, and this is a good movie. Now, when you leave this movie, when you leave the theater, it has you thinking about so many things, right? It has you actually thinking about your actual life, if you pay attention. So the next scene where he's talking about cause and effect. And this is a bad guy, mind you. He's a bad guy. So he's saying, if the rule you follow brought you to this, of what use is the rule? Very, very profound, I'd say, right? And then he shoots the guy. The guy's like basically dead. Picks up the phone. Phone's ringing. He picks up the phone, and the other end of the phone is saying, is this now dead guy here? So he says, not in the sense that you mean. That's another profound moment, right? So the very end of the movie, the wife is saying, well, he does the coin toss thing again. So he basically flips a quarter, puts it on his hand, and tells you to call it. And this is what's going to either save you or, seal your fate, that he's going to kill you. So she says she's not going to call it. The coin doesn't have any say. And then he looks at her, he rolls his eyes, he says, I got here the same way the coin did. So this is just one example of a movie that can actually get your brain functioning. But you also have to have some sort of, you have to have something going on in there for you to see the movie this way. Because other people just think, oh, it's just a violent movie or whatever. I don't like violent movies. Now, the same people who will say things like, I don't like violent movies, they'll watch something like Tyler Perry, And I don't know many black folks that would watch something like No Country. Or I don't know many black folks that would read something like No Country. But the problem is, when we're kind of relegated to certain types of media, this kind of goes against like what we want to do. Okay, so essentially, No Country for Old Men is a tale about cause and effect, because Sugar is kind of like this unstoppable force, but obviously at the end of the movie, he ends up showing that he's vulnerable. He gets into this car crash, and you see for the first time that he's, this guy, he can be beat, but it's gonna take some twist of fate. So when we look at media, and obviously some crackers, they produced this film. So this is by the Coen brothers. What kind of movies do we produce as African people? What kind of books do we produce? What kind of music and plays and poetry? And if you take a quick survey over the last, I want to say the last 250 years, there's been a sharp decline, like a sharp decline in the quality of things that we produce. And you can't really blame anybody but ourselves. And before you get all outraged about that, one major example is Malcolm X. Malcolm X was an extremely intelligent guy. He came from, it was a tragic circumstance that he comes from, right? So he reads, he observes, he learns from his mistakes, sort of. And then all of a sudden, he joins this group called the Black Muslims. At first, it's called the Black Muslims. So I mean, well, we're not here to talk about history per se, but basically, his mentor told him to be careful with the media, because the media will have you, they will demonize you. They already demonize black people. Now he goes and he gets in front of that camera, and what does he do? It's just does all of this stuff, right? What does it produce? Focus, because that's the theme. What did this produce? This is media. Malcolm X gets on the camera, talks, white man's a devil, crack is a devil, this, that, right? Goes on the TV show. Some rapper will rap in a song, he'll rap in the lyric that, these crackers such and such and such, right? What are you doing? You're on some crackers label, whether it be this label or that label, indie, major, whatever. Your money has crackers on them. You're not really endeavoring to create this type of thing. So black folks don't spend a lot of money in this industry, this media industry, right? And what happens? We're given things. We're given media to consume. And when we consume this thing, what does it do? It's like, are you going to give your child a bag of Doritos? Or are you going to give them some fruit and vegetables, right? So if you complain about these things, like No Country for Old Men is a great movie. Now, if you line that up with something that Spike Lee did, let's be honest here, okay? The Sweet Blood of Jesus. I don't know who else. I don't know if anybody else saw that movie, but I watched it and it was like, what the hell is going on? I didn't really come away with anything, but be careful. This person might be a vampire, and that's just ridiculous. But if the rule you follow brought you to this, then of what use was the rule? When he's talking, he's pointing he's got a gun just basically at this guy's forehead. That's profound. So really, media is the greatest force of this generation, of this century. Russia they spend the most money in the world on media, and this is like basically propaganda. They even pay people to make fake social media accounts and kind of do subversive activity. So if you spend $1 billion on media, and if every year in the Super Bowl they spend the most money on advertising, you have to wonder, why is that? So I think we should think about what we listen to, what we watch, what we read, and the type of things that we produce, because when a young man runs up the street and sticks a gun in your back and says, "Give me a wallet," you're gonna be wondering. Well, first you're gonna be wondering, I ain't got nothing in there. He's probably gonna shoot me. Second thing you're gonna wonder is, where did they get this from? What kind of music do they listen to? What kind of movies do they watch? Over and over again, you gotta ask these questions because they're important questions. They're not asked enough. So, I have a Jet magazine. It's from 2013. Jet magazine from 2013. And there's the typical stuff in here. Black couples get married. You have a couple advertisements. Now I just want to show you a couple of these advertisements. So here's one. Cigarettes. Okay, they look really happy about it too. Like you can't get happier than that. Like that's. And Surgeon General's warning. It'll basically kill you. These are products for other people's things, and it's kind of like you're gonna consume these things. You just buy and buy and buy. So this is our magazine. This is Jet magazine, right? This is black folks. So Dr. Dre's in here. You got a Crest toothpaste ad. You have another Colgate toothpaste ad. And McDonald's. I'm loving it. I don't know if y'all noticed, but McDonald's got a lot of black folks in their commercials now. So yeah, you have to wonder if you're spending X amount of dollars on things like these, and this is what you're so-called producing. You have to wonder, why are we producing this, and then what is it doing for us? Like you really have to ask that question. So the theme of this show and future shows will be, are you thinking about this thing, this rule that you're following? If it brings you to a certain point, then what's the use of it? What's the use of this rule? If you're going to make a whole bunch of money and then spend it on something that's not going to produce anything for you, what's the use of it? And that might hurt a lot of feelings, but you gotta, what do you call it? You gotta break some eggs and make an omelet, And in closing, I would like to add one thing. That when we look to people as leadership, you have to ask the leader, where are you leading me? As my friend Oni likes to say, where's the North Star? And if they can't point to the North Star, then you need new leadership. And then you have to ask yourself, how did I get this leadership in the first place? You produce your own leaders. Your leadership is produced through your activity. So if you're producing such a person that doesn't even know where they're going, you ultimately can't know where you're going. That should bother you. And like I said about Malcolm earlier, Malcolm X, while he was an intelligent person, obviously he's intelligent, he ultimately didn't know where the North Star was. And so when you appear on game shows, you appear on talk shows, and all of these things, you have to question that, and you can't be afraid to question that. Because if you're going to have freedom of speech, you have to be willing to die for the right to say what you're going to say, because it's going to upset somebody. And you have to, basically what you're saying is, I'm going to say this, do what you must, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to do something, and nothing is going to stop me from doing it unless you can, and you can try. So every subsequent show is going to be produced in this manner. I'm going to say something, it's going to probably upset you, and just know that it's coming from a good place. So again, I'm Osman DC's. You can call me Kofi. And the show, as of this moment, doesn't have a title. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'd like to thank my My brother Ed here, best producer, best director. I don't know what the terms are. I haven't read about it yet. So yeah. Think about what you're doing. Think about what you're saying, and think about what you're producing. And yeah.
That's pretty good. Very well.
Yeah.